Has this ever happened to you when trying to knock down pesky popcorn ceilings? The first thing you want to do, if you're planning on ripping down your popcorn ceilings, the first thing you want to do is get rid of everything from the room, clear it all out, because there's going to be dust. Even though I said there wasn't, there's going to be dust. So get rid of everything and make sure your work area is clean. Before you even consider scraping a ceiling, you need to consider two things. Do I want to do this myself, or do I want to hire a contractor to do this job for me? Now, typically I would go through the entire process of how to find a contractor, how to check their credentials, getting multiple quotes, checking their background references. But for this type of job, it's not that complicated. You're scraping a ceiling. There's really nothing to it. So I'm going to gloss over that part. And I'm guessing if you're looking at DIY YouTube videos, you're in no position to hire a contractor anyway, so let's move on. Also, go Jays. Sorry your season got One of the main reasons that I'm doing this as well is I've got this big hole in my ceiling. We had squirrels or chipmunks or something like that up in our walls. Up in there. Oh God, I want to find out if they're still in there. But then I'll probably get rat dump on my hands, so I'm just gonna leave that. After the ceiling scrape, I'm going to show you how to do a quick drywall patch job using things found around your house. So there's many ways to scrape a ceiling. I'm going to show you a couple of options, and I'm going to show you the way that I'm going to do it. The way I'm doing it is fairly straightforward. I'm taking this long-handled scraper right here, which is more useful than one of these scrapers, because these are good. This one's nice and sharp, nice and straight. The purpose of this is to be able to duct tape the dustpan onto the end of this, and then, walk with me, hook it up to the end of the shop vac. So I've got a long handle for the shop vac. That'll follow along here. I'm gonna put another row of duct tape on that, wrap it around this, and then the idea is, as the scrapings fall off, as you scrape them along here, they'll fall into the dustpan, and then I'll have the end hose of the shop vac sucking up all the pieces that come out of it. So I should be able to rip through this job. If you don't have these kinds of tools, it's not a big deal. You can still go out and buy some of the tools you need. I would recommend, if you're doing it on your own, still get a long-handled scraper. These are far better than the short ones, because the long handle is gonna save your back and your shoulders. If you've got a lot of scraping to do, that's gonna save your life. I actually almost blew out my trap muscles. Traps. Doing it with a small scraper on a large room, so highly recommended to get one of these. Now this one has obviously seen better days. But another thing I recommend is hitting the edge with either a sandpaper or a file, getting it as sharp as you can, because if you try to scrape off anything that is caked on or baked on the ceiling, because it's essentially paint and glue spackled on up there, that's what you're trying to scrape off. You want this blade to be as sharp as possible to make your life as easy as possible. And then, hopefully, it should just cut right through it. Now, you don't need to wear gloves if you don't want to. I'm not going to, but it's personal preference. Also, I highly recommend getting a respirator or some kind of face mask. These ones are cheap. You can get a 3-pack of these at the dollar store. This one is slightly more expensive. I do like using this for drywall work because the dust is a lot finer. For this one, I'm just gonna use this because the dust is a little bit thicker and I'm not too worried about it. Also, these are a lot lighter and they're a little bit harder to breathe through. This thing gets a little bit heavy, a little bit sweaty. So these are a good buy. Go pick up a bunch of these. They're cheap. Hey, that's a good idea, but you breathe through your nose. You're not a dolphin. Okay, so this thing is a monstrosity, but I'm hoping that it works as intended. So scraper on top, obviously, hose in the middle, fairly straightforward. So the angle on this needs to be the proper distance between the scraper and the dustbin, because Let's say you're holding this at a 45-degree angle up towards the ceiling. You want all the things that are gonna fall off the ceiling to hit this, hit your dustbin, and then hopefully get sucked up into the end of the shop vac there. The only thing that's kind of unfortunate is I don't have the shop vac attachment, the wide hose end piece that would have fit in here, but I don't think that's gonna be a problem. The other thing is, considering this is pure makeshift, the scraper overlaps each side by about an inch, which means I'm absolutely gonna get stuff falling off of it and hitting the floor, but I don't really care about that. As long as the majority of it falls into this area and gets sucked up, I'm happy with that. And I have a big area to scrape, and if this actually works, then I'm going to use it pretty much all over the house, because my house is from 1982 and it's a popcorn ceiling nightmare. So this is my setup. I'm actually somewhat happy with this. It looks really mangled, but I mean, if this thing works, this will be a 5-minute setup and it should be able to deal with this no problem. One thing I will mention, a lot of people say that you need to wet your ceiling before you scrape it down, and in my experience, I've done that, and it does work in some situations. You need to assess your ceiling individually. So some of these ceilings are the straight spray-on stucco style with no paint in them, and it will be a mixture of drywall compound and water, and that's just spackled onto the ceiling. Some of them have paint over top of them, and the ones that have the paint over top of them are the ones that are really hard to get down, because those ones have more adhesive in the paint, and then those you would want to spray with water to soften it up a little bit. I mean, it's up to you really. You can, what I would suggest is doing a test around one of the corners. Do a quick scrape with it dry. If it seems like it's coming off, great. You don't need, it'll keep the dust down a little bit and you don't need to spray it with water. If you find it's a hard time without using water, then grab a sprayer, a 5-gallon sprayer from a big box store, and hit it in sections, in 3x3 foot sections that you want to scrape down, and then that will help you out a lot and it'll keep the dust down as well. Okay, so it took me all of 2 seconds to realize this isn't gonna work. I love this setup. This thing looks badass. It looks like a Mad Max, like catapult launcher or something like that, but the blade is sharp enough. It's scraping a very fine top coat off of it, but it's not getting right up to the drywall and making it nice and smooth like I had expected. So I took apart my dystopian future nightmare machine and I'm changing up the plan. What I'm gonna do is just use a scraper, wet the ceiling, give it a scrape, see what happens. I forgot to mention, I also finished these stairs a long time ago. Before I had this channel, I made all these stairs. This thing turned out amazingly nice, and installed these doors. Looking pretty damn good. Okay, so this job turned out to be a bit of a nightmare. I've got no industrial sprayer, which means I can't spray this. I can't get the ceiling wet enough to actually scrape it down, and if you hit any part that's dry, it just stops dead. So you can see I'm digging into the drywall a little bit. Pretty rough around the edges. Not a big deal, I don't mind doing it. The problem ends up being I have this tiny spray bottle because some people in China decided to eat bats 6 months ago, and now we're in this situation. No exaggeration, it took 5 days for Home Depot to deliver a $300 order. So at this rate, I'm gonna put this project on hold. There's no point digging into the ceiling any more than I need to. I'm gonna keep going with some drywall patches. What I would suggest is looking up other videos on how to do this properly, because apparently I don't know what the hell I'm doing. No, that's not totally true. I do know what I'm doing. I was just testing out other methods of doing it to see if they would save me some time. Which they didn't. I mean, some of them did, but this one didn't. So in conclusion, this method works, but you need to get a industrial pump sprayer, like a 5-gallon sprayer that you can fill with water and spray all along the ceiling. You also need to get a good quality scraper with a long handle on about a 45-degree angle to really get it down from the ceiling. Beyond that, it's gonna get messy. It's a really messy job. You can't get around it unless you hire somebody. This job is an absolute mess of a nightmare. I mean, that's the scrapings down here. Where? Here? I don't know how to point. Here. These scrapings are from, honestly, maybe a 20th of the ceiling. So this stucco is on thick. When it's all off, it's gonna look great. After I scrape the ceiling, I need to patch it, I need to paint it. If you're thinking about doing this job, one word of warning, it's a lot of work, so be prepared. Other than that, thanks for watching. I think this week I'm gonna move on to builds that are less hellish, kind of nightmarish. Building a pulley activated garage storage system. It's gonna be sick. So if you wanna see that, subscribe because I'm pretty excited about that. I'm gonna give Riley a parking spot for his tiny Audi. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, and I'll see you next time.